Welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today we discuss a very important issue for the development of India and the continued investment in infrastructure in India. Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Prasanna B. Varale have given a very good order where they have said that, first of all, the stoppage of the Oroville Township project should, in a sense, be allowed to continue. The stoppage should not be allowed to continue, and now the bar has been lifted. The construction can continue. But the following statement that they made has far reaching implications for development in India. The court has ruled that development is equally important as environment protection. In a country like India, where we have 1.5 billion people that need to be lifted out of poverty, and development is very important. And the court statement sets a strong precedent. There will be many other cases where, of course, this will be discussed and citations will be given. That is why this judgment of Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Prasanna B. Varale we are discussing today. I have a very eminent panel joining me. Advocate Mahesh Agarwal, Managing Partner of Agarwal Law Associates, joined me on the panel today. He's, as you all know, is Managing Partner of ALA, one of leading law firms at the Supreme Court of India. Good to see you. I have with me Senior Advocate Sanjay Jain. He is for close to a decade served as the Additional Solicitor General of India between 2014 and 2024, close to 2024. Now is back to private practice for the past year and a half. Good to see you. And of course, we'll get a peek onto how the government thinks through you. And, because government has a view on things, and it will be interesting to know your views on this. We have with us Mohit Saraf, Managing Partner of Saraf and Partners, one of India's leading 360-degree law firms. You have very strongly spoken on government role in projects, and also how government should build projects, sell projects, and infrastructure-led approach to development in the past 2-3 years on the shows. So it would be nice to know what you think on the courts, sticking to this stand. At the outset, let me request Mahesh Agarwal to make the opening comment, and then we'll go for detailed comments from others. Over to you, Mr. Agarwal.
Hello, the judgment of Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Varale is a very important judgment in the present context. This was a case where a road was to be constructed around this Oroville ashram. A ring road had to be constructed, for which some trees had to be cut. All permissions were in place, but NGT took a stand that this is spoiling the environment and virtually stopped the project. The Supreme Court has again re-emphasized the important principle of sustainable development, which seems to be forgotten by various people over time, and emphasize that for the purpose of sustainable development, if any trees have to be cut, any temporary damage has to be done, you have to sustain it with the future development, and the development should be given primacy. Now, what is the court has held is that the permissions were in place. It is nobody's suggestion, and it cannot be anybody's suggestion, that if any damage is done to the environment contrary to any permission, contrary to any provision of law, that would be acceptable. That is nobody's case. What happens is that a government authority, say NHAI, or any other government authority permits a project within the four corners of law. There are PILs filed, public interest petitions filed by some neighbors, etc., who want to stop the project. And that's what happens is that the NGT or any court of law, say 226 writ court, stops the project. I personally feel that a due deference should be given to the government authorities, to the agencies who give the permission after examining the laws, because they are also doing a public purpose of protecting environment and ensuring sustainable development. So I think it's a very important step which will give a lot of impetus to the government and government authorities to permit development in places where this kind of situation may arise.
Thank you for that opening comment. We'll go to Senior Advocate Sanjay Jain for his comment on Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Prasanna B. Varale's order.
In my view, Tarun, this judgment at a very appropriate time reinforces the position which is the most desirable position. We have, whether it is from the legislature point of view, legislative enactments from time to time, or the judicial pronouncements from time to time, we as a nation have been stating this aspect that in a developing country like India, the sustainable development is the desirable objective. But what happens is that we conquer on this when we pass a resolution in a conference or in a private conversation, even in a judicial opinion from time to time. But when it comes to deciding a challenge to an ongoing or an upcoming project, especially the infrastructure project, whether it is in a private domain or it is in public-private partnership or a government initiative, and when the challenge comes under judicial review, suddenly a very radical view is taken. So if I were to think on it, why this change of position suddenly? So
Yes.
maybe subconsciously in the mind of the deciding authorities, they get influenced by the radical Western propaganda, with little realizing that these Western countries, particularly USA and the 23 or 22 Western European nations, who from 1850 to 2011 are responsible for 79% of carbon emission, and who still, as of today, despite being just 16% of population of the world being represented through them, are still um, responsible for nearly 45% of carbon emission. So they keep on making this propaganda, which influences the decision-making process or thought process of an ordinary citizen or a person who is sitting in that capacity. Because what we need to understand is this, that when the matter reaches NGT, and in 99% of cases, the authorities who have to apply their mind at the first stage, who have to give the environment clearance, etc., they practically apply the propositions without realistic or objective aspects being kept in mind. So maybe NGT also believes that, how many decisions of theirs do we set aside? So, but in the process, some very important projects get forestalled. And I have always believed that whenever it comes to the infrastructure matters, the court should be very, very slow and reluctant to pass any interim order. That is the legislative view also, having amended the fundamental law in this regard in the Specific Relief Act, introducing a section that infrastructure projects ought not to be stayed in a casual manner. The same theory, if you enlarge and expand and apply to the decision-making bodies pertaining to environment, that is NGT, then the same principle applies to them also, maybe on a different parameter, but it does apply to them also, that whenever they are confronted with a situation where there is a development issue and there is also an environment issue, and the objectivity and desirability of sustainable development is an accepted proposition, then they must be ready to understand and appreciate that there has to be a situation where sometimes environmental issues will have to be compromised to some extent, of course, in a manner that they are compensated in some other way as provided. But nonetheless, in these kind of matters, there has to be a more cautious approach. And this is exactly what this judgment of Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Varale re-emphasizes and reinforces.
Thank you for that opening comment. I'll go to Mr. Mohit Saraf. Two things I want to ask you in your opening comment. A, your firm gets investment into India because it acts of investment coming into India. So you know the mind of the foreign investor who puts money in India. Secondly, if they have a problem, you help them in litigation. So you are doing the dual job. Could you analyze this from what the court has done? That what message do they get when the court passes such an order?
I think what right now Sanjay has said and Mahesh has said, just let me add a little bit so that at least your viewers can get a clear picture. One is that this project got an approval, environmental approval in 2001 under the then existing law. When this matter was heard by National Green Tribunal, They did not find any violation of the environmental law. But what they did was, there is a principle called precautionary principle. And this precautionary principle was actually thought about in 1992, in 2002 at Rio, when the climate sustainable development theory and that entire big global conference was there. So they said, because on the precautionary ground, this project need to refile for approval under 2006 law. So this project had an approval in 2001. He said 2006 you had an environmental impact assessment studies. So you should refile it under precautionary. So the judgment had said is that this is basically the Green Tribunal exceeded its brief or exceeded the jurisdiction. It cannot ask a project which is already in construction. And this project was approved in 1968 and it has been going on in different phases. You can't take it back and say now you need to fight, you need to apply fresh under the new norms. And that is what it said. He said there is no question of reapplying. And what they said is that what is important here is what the court said, that really, I think, Tarun, we have to understand, Gurgaon has been made. Now, hundreds of trees have been brought down. Any development project, whether it's a Delhi airport, whether it's a building, whether India, if you're doing manufacturing facilities, any factory, you are bringing down, there will be environmental degradation. The sustainable development theory says that you need to grow. However, you need to minimize the impact. So you have to plant trees. You have to actually have smart cities. You have to have better quality, environmental friendly energy generation. So that is what sustainable is. It's not that you close the project, because every project, every house you construct, there will be environmental degradation. And what is important is what the court had said is that you can't reopen because once you have given an approval is given. What you can do is you can improve that situation. Same thing was the case that if you remember in Delhi, in Mumbai, there is a huge traffic congestion. And the link road was being made on the coastal regulation zone. And there also, the Supreme Court said that congestion is a problem in Mumbai. We need to solve it. We need to allow the road to be constructed in CRZ zone. Having said that, we need to make sure there is more afforestation, there is more open space, there are more gardens. These things have been done so that the environment stays and environment is least degraded. Or if it's degraded at one place, it is improved at the other place. And that is the concept of sustainable development. So what the court had said, that you can't really reopen an approved project. You can't say that because you have a new rules, now you under precautionary rules, you need to follow that, which actually brings out a situation that any foreign investor, when he's putting money to the project, he does not know what changes will happen tomorrow and whether a project which is supposed to do certain things, whether it will actually see a light of the day or the rules will get changed. And it's a very important thing that they are saying that this project, once approved under precautionary principles, NGT is wrong in asking this project to be re-implemented, and they should need to go through an assessment study once more.
Point very well taken. I'll go to Advocate Mahesh Agarwal. See, we are having about 15 lakh crores poured into infrastructure in India. So much of money going in, lots of problems, permissions will come up. In that light, how do you analyze Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Prasanna B. Varle's approach to this issue? And in India, Mr. Mohit Saraf said that this particular Auroville project was planned 40-50 years ago. But so is the case with many projects. Even the flyover connecting Mumbai to Navi Mumbai was planned 40 years ago. Even the coastal road project was planned long back. India, it takes a bit of a time, but it should not get stuck further in court system. Given that as a fact, and also one point that a lot of money comes from abroad now for infrastructure in India, or they buy ready assets. So if we delay, the cost also goes up, and there are other implications. Given that as a fact, what do you analyze this judgment by the two judges?
The judgment gives a very important guiding light to the authorities who get proposals for approval, that they have to keep in mind the environment as well as development. And if they give a permission, then a guiding light is given to the authorities and say NGT and other courts that there should be minimal interference. Until and unless the decision is completely perverse, government has not applied its mind to any environment issue, it's a different matter. But if the government has considered all factors, has applied its mind, given permission, there should be no interference. That in turn gives confidence to investors, people who are investing in various projects, that after construction has started, after development work has started, investments are done, the risk of any court interfering with a development project is absolutely minimal. Meaning thereby you can give some confidence to the decision of the government, that the decision of the government will not be interfered with. In this, I just want to say, what is the meaning of sustainable development? Sustainable development is nothing but meeting the needs of the present generation, what it needs from the environment, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Yes.
So, current needs should be met and future needs should be protected. As long as that is done, development must take place. Now, with this burgeoning, this increase in population all over the country, there are needs for housing, need for roads. Then we have to compete with other countries. We have to have sports facilities. We have to have tourism facilities. All our hill stations today are completely, I mean, they need to be developed. We always say that Himachal and Uttarakhand was actually made to compete with Switzerland. We are nowhere there. We are nowhere there. There is no development, not a single ropeway in whole of Uttarakhand. Whereas in Europe, you see in every corner there is one. So to do all these development work, to compete with the rest of the world, we need development. And I think this judgment also supports, like the Trump says, America first, and our Prime Minister says India first. To support India and to make India first, we need development.
You've very point well taken that currently for India, development is priority, and the judgment also emphasizes that by pushing for infrastructure creation through a positive judgment. I'll go to Mr. Sanjay Jain. In India, there is a PIL culture. This time it was the NGT. But many times there are PILs which delay development projects on some of the other environment pretext. Given that as a fact, do you think Justice Bela Trivedi and Justice Prasanna Varne's judgment is, in a sense, an enabling factor, wherein which the Supreme Court now is issuing statements like development and environment go hand in hand? So don't think that you can just use environment as the buzzword and try to derail an important project.
Yes, this should act as a eye opener for many a constitutional court in this country, where the PILs are very liberally entertained, even in infrastructure sector. It has also been seen that recently, instead of PILs, the similar petitions are filed by a projected aggrieved person, so as to avoid the level of PIL, going to a single judge roster and resulting in these kind of orders. The underlying principle which defines the judgment of Justice Trivedi and Justice Varale is the famous saying in Sanskrit, that ati sarvatra varjayate. Excess of everything is bad. This is what is the underlying principle, because what is sustainable development? It is, as explained by Mr. Agarwal, it is a balanced optimum approach where person thinks with equanimity, plans with great amount of care, and all pros and cons are already there in the draft proposal. And we also need to be aware of the fact that, and we all know it, that many a time the concerned regulatory authority gives the clearance, which is a conditional clearance. That, okay, I am giving you clearance, now you go to Wildlife Board. Now, it just mentions it like that. Now, in a given situation, there is no role of Wildlife Board, but still that person is relegated to go. I'm just saying by way of an example. That person is relegated to go to an authority which has patently no role to play. So that in any case, the clearance taking process in this country takes so much of time. And after that, if suppose there is a funding by World Bank or some other kind of an international grant, that grant is all conditional to time. It's time centric. Now, if there is a stay order which is being passed, I'm doing an arbitration in which the project was funded by World Bank, and because of these stay orders passed by High Court and then also for some duration in Supreme Court, the time limit for the World Bank grant ended, and the project cost suddenly became too high, and the contract needed to be renegotiated to a great increase in the project cost. So the purpose of bringing these kind of policies where the government and the other stakeholders in the country, they want to take the country to greater heights, as Mr. Agarwal said, that creating some kind of a pool, some kind of a value system for the future generation, which will give them platform to hold their heads high and to compete with the best in the world. So we need a country which is developed. We have neighboring countries who are developed because they do not have so much of interference from the judicial sector. Not that I am saying that the judicial interference ought not to be there in a democratic country like ours, but then every country defines its own legal system, its own value system, its own principles to deal with a particular kind of situation. So this judgment tries to infuse that awakening or that understanding that please apply your mind with balance and please appreciate that what has already gone behind in
Yes.
giving approval for the project, that the people who are responsible for looking after different aspects of the project are experts in their fields.
Yes.
You are basically in one stroke, you are mocking the intelligence of all those experts who have already applied their mind. In one stroke, you are killing the ecosystem of the financing which that project has been able to accumulate till now. And then in another stroke, you are putting the present and future of the country. You are sort of projecting a situation where the country's image is dented, the progress is delayed and deferred, and everybody is waiting for that opportunity to take benefit of the contemporaneous development in the world. So, everything gets spoiled because of one ill-informed or I would say inappropriately or irresponsible state of mind in which such decisions are taken. Because what happens is this, that it's very easy to create slogans. Polluter pays principle. It's a very beautiful slogan. But then in order to justify that slogan, don't exceed your limit is the ultimate message of the judgment, in my opinion.
Point very well taken. I'll go to Mr. Mohit Saraf. Mr. Saraf, you have spoken strongly about India's need to create infrastructure between now and 2047, 2050. That what we have not created in past 75 years, you said we'll create in next 30 years. Do you think such court judgments play a vital role in playing an enabling environment for this money to come in from foreign to India? Over to you for your comment.
So today, when we talk about 2047, which is basically 100 years of our independence, we say India will become Viksit Bharat, a developed nation. And our Indian economy, the size of a GDP, which is right now under $4 trillion, will become $30 trillion.
Yes.
So basically, today we are at $4 trillion, will become $30 trillion. So basically, we have to add $26 trillion.
Yes.
As per the World Bank, to add $1 trillion, we have to invest 55% of that money for growth. Now, why do you need to invest? Because basically by investment, what you do is you improve productivity. So our roads take half the time, our airports it takes less time, so that human beings become more productive. And therefore the per capita start increasing. And therefore the GDP increases. So therefore today, to go to a $30 trillion economy, we have to invest almost $13 trillion. $26 trillion is the gap 50% has to be invested. These $13 trillion, I think we have to understand very clearly that this $13 trillion investment will be in factories, in power projects, in roads, in hotels, in airports, in hill stations. All these things will lead to environmental degradation. You cannot have a construction which will not lead to environmental degradation. You have to understand. The job is not that stop environmental degradation. The job is to ensure that you do environmental degradation on one side when you're cutting off tree, building of hotels, building of malls. On the other side, do right policies, afforestation, watershed development, you do other things, you do smart city, you do nuclear power, you do all other things. So what it does is, it says basically growth with minimal destruction. And because at one place you are destroying and at one place you're creating. That is the whole thing. So right now what NGT did, in my personal view, what it did was, it says there's no problem in the compliance of the Auroville project. However, we believe because once you name a tribunal, National Green Tribunal, it exceeds the jurisdiction. It focuses on green, not on growth. Now you change this as a National Sustainable Development Tribunal, the whole thing will change because it is only about green. So green comes at the cost of growth and therefore stall the project. So the court said, Mrs. Trivedi said, he said, really at the end of the day, the project was approved as per the laws then existing. Now, under precautionary principles, you can't write new law that take a fresh approval. And that is the critical thing. And therefore, what is important is all our judicial body, we should know that. I think clearly, I think the government, first thing they should do is they should change the name of National Green Tribunal and call it National Sustainable Development Tribunal. Because then you are looking at both the things together. Because right now you carried, if you remember, the Mopa airport was being built in Goa. They stopped the project. He said, because this will lead to Western Ghats, diversity, and all those things. And the Supreme Court again said that let the project happen because there's a lot of congestion in Goa. Having said that, let's find a mechanism by which diversity in Western Ghats is protected. And that is the important thing. Because we have to understand any growth, any development, if you're building a house, you will cause environmental degradation. But the aim is sustainable development, as what Mahesh said, is to make sure that you grow and meet your present requirement, but are not compromising future. And that is an important thing. And I think, in my view, that is the reason why NGT got carried away with the green word and said, we have to protect green, even if it means no development, that's good.
Two very key points in your intervention. One is to rename the NGT so that the orientation changes. If the government is listening, I think this should happen soon. Secondly, the GMR built this world-class Mopa airport, and I vouch for it through so many feedbacks that tourists are coming into Goa because you have a world-class airport. The single most biggest complaint was the Goa airport till Mopa came up.
Correct.
And I think Mopa has changed the face of Goa. It took time, but it did. I got just 30 seconds. Mr. Mahesh Agarwal for the final comment, and then we end the show.
No, I think this is a path-breaking judgment emphasizing sustainable development. Now, there are other issues which are currently pending in the Supreme Court, and we have to look for guidance from that. One current issue which is affecting the entire industry is on the issue of ex post facto approval. What happens sometimes is that industries, projects are built in excess of the permissible limit, and sometimes without permission also, both kind of there. They could be bona fide projects, maybe due to oversight, maybe because of vagueness, or maybe because of lack of clarity whether permission is required or not. What the government has been doing is that let's assume that a project has been built without permission. They assess the project that today if it was built, would it be able to get permission or not? If the permission can be granted, the way it has been built, ex post facto approval can be granted. Of course, there can be heavy penalties or any restrictions, etc. Currently, the Supreme Court, by way of an interim order, has stopped ex post facto approvals. Various projects all over India are stopped. Parties have gone to the court, and I hope this judgment helps us in securing some approval from the court with regard to this power of the government. So this ex post facto approval is also part of the government only. Government has to give approval.
Point very well taken. I would like to thank Advocate Mahesh Agarwal, Senior Advocate Sanjay Jain, Mohit Saraf, Managing Partner of Saraf and Partners. You came, contributed on such an important judgment and an important topic having implications for many other cases. Appreciate your joining us and request.
But Tarun, I want to make one remark. I
Yes.
think this judgment in March, in a way, is a fitting India's reply to Trump. Because
Right.
Trump, what is Trump saying? He said, drill, baby, drill. And
Yes.
we are also saying, grow, baby, grow.
Right.
It's a really an important thing that development should not be at all cost, but development, stopping development for only for future without meeting the present requirement is a disaster in itself.
Thanks for that closing comment. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.